Hello. When Mitch was telling that story about his kids, I thought of the first time I took mine to Orlando. It was like the worst nightmare for my wife and I because they wanted to go to Disney World. And so we agreed only to be there for 2 days. So when we arrived into the hotel, I turned on the TV because we had been on a plane for 10 hours and then in a car for another hour. And boys started watching a cartoon and they were suddenly not crying and they were happy and my wife and I were happy. And then all of a sudden a commercial came on and my boys started screaming at me. They're like, "Dad, why did you change the channel?" or whatever. And I was like, I didn't do anything. I haven't touched anything. So they ran up to the television screen and started to swipe it as well. They were about 3 and 4. And it made me realize that they had grown up in a completely different world than I had because they didn't even really understand what TV was. They didn't really understand what a commercial was. So I think we're kind of in a very, very early stage of all this, and I'm going to get to that in a second. So I'm just going to focus on some of the biggest tech trends, consumer trends, and then the business implications. So what does it mean for all of us in business? And get into a little bit about the landscape of retail. So this is just the image of the web sort of awakening, just like the beginning of each day. The sun comes up, and all of a sudden, you're getting on with your day. And now, this is really how the web is for the world. Any guess about how many people are online right now? Rough idea? Globally? What do you think? Billion people? 2 billion? So it depends which source you look at. It's probably getting towards about 3 billion people. Guess how many of those are on the mobile web? Mitch talked about that a lot. How many do you think are on the mobile web right now in the world? Any ideas? Billion? Yeah, it's actually probably about 2 billion. So most of the new people getting onto the web are on mobile devices. So about 3.4 million devices every single day are being activated. So imagine, that's like bigger than Madrid every single day, 360 days a year. So when you realize there's 5 billion people in the world that don't have access to the internet, you realize that it's early morning. It's actually one of the earliest and slowest stages right now of this major revolution that's going on. And I guess Mitch talked a little bit about this, about how the mobile phone is like kind of right at the heart of all of this and everything else is really peripheral. The thing that's very interesting though is in most of our homes, how many devices are roughly connected to each other, do you think? What do you think? 10 for some? Yeah, I think if you have, we have a Nest smoke alarm, thermostat smoke alarm, also we have something called drop cam, and they're all kind of communicating to each other. So if there's carbon monoxide in the air, it turns off the electricity. Or if you integrate it with your car on a wintry night as you're heading back home within 10 miles, the house starts to heat up because they're communicating. So it's just very early stages of that. In general, we have about 70 different devices in the home that could be connected, but probably the 20 or so that are really important to us will be connected over the next handful of years, and that's a major trend. So I mentioned a little bit about mobile, that's a huge trend that won't go away if we were talking in 2020, 5 years from now. I really believe, though, this idea of these things being connected. I have this smartwatch, and I got I just got an email that came in about a client meeting I'm going to be having. I've got a reminder that I've got to be at the airport by about 4:30 and what time to leave. And that's connected to my phone, again, which is connected to something called Google Now, which tries to anticipate what I might need before I even ask for it. And I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. So I guess stepping back, wow, almost no one's on the web. They're going to be coming onto the web. These things are going to be connected, which is going to just help us get on with our day and help us do the things that we really want. What else is going to be, do you think, the norm? Think about how you access the internet today. It can be pretty patchy. I travel a lot, even in the UK, and I'm on a train, and all of a sudden the web goes away. Or you go to a different country, it's not as fast. You get on a different device, it's not as fast. We think the other trend that you can pretty much bet on is that we'll be on a much faster web. So if it's a gigabyte, which we've been trialing in the US with Google Fiber, or on wireless, which is incredibly fast, 4G, 5G, just imagine a web where you can get onto it anywhere, anytime, and it's super fast, and all these things are going to be connected. Well, what does that mean then in terms of data? I mean, we talked about sex with data in the previous session. Most don't have that real connection with what's happening within their business because it's in all these different data sources. Well, the only, I mean, it's almost bad news on one hand. It's only going to be getting worse. Because imagine all these new devices, all coming online, all this data there. The businesses that can make sense of it, that can really find out the intention or really personalize, are going to be in really good shape. So how do you get from data to knowledge to insight? And I'm going to get into that a little bit. So those are the big tech trends that I think we're thinking about. Any that you'd add in, or do you think I missed any major ones? I'm trying to keep it incredibly high level. So as far as the consumer then, is it a good time to be a consumer, do you think? It's an amazing time, isn't it? It's like we are totally in control. We have at our fingertips access to any price, any bit of information that we might need to have to make smart choices. So I think the businesses that just embrace this, accept this, are going to really be successful. And so if anything, there's this new WWW. Any idea what this stands for? From a consumer standpoint. It's just been something that's been kind of thrown out there a little bit. So there's three components of it. It's like what they want, when they want it, and where they want it. And we really feel this will continue to be major areas of differentiation in retail, for example, or just in general. So the WWW. So it's what I want personally, not just like something mass-produced. Like this is an example with what Ray-Ban is doing. And you can see from this video, which I'll just show like 10 or 15 seconds of, that you used to walk into a store, and you can play the video now, and you just kind of get whatever was there. Imagine the near future, though, where you wouldn't imagine even walking into a shop and just walking out with what they have. You will customize it based on the color that you like, the lens that you like, and on and on and on. Or if you went in to buy a particular phone, it will look exactly like you want it to. I'm not sure if the video is playing, so I'm gonna skip that. And I mentioned how powerful mobile is in this revolution. I think, again, if we were coming back to this moment, say if we were going 5 years in the future onto this stage and we were all talking, I think there's going to be business models and new businesses that we can't even think about that will be disrupting full industries. I think like with Airbnb, what that's doing in travel, Uber, everyone's talked about it. When you just go back a handful of years, though, no one even knew it existed. And you could argue it's going to be one of the most powerful, I guess, transformers in e-commerce delivery. Who knows, right? It's just beginning. But by making it trivially simple for you to get a cab that's nearby, don't even worry about payment. You didn't even realize you paid. Like this morning, I came from the airport, and I was like, oh my God, I have to pay in cash. So we had to stop. I had to go out to an ATM. It was raining. And I just forgot that you had to use cash to go into a cab. I mean, even if you're getting a black cab in London, I always use Halo now, or Uber or whatever. And it's on demand, and it's going to be at a good price. So again, the consumer's in control. And so these businesses that are literally just launching an app can really transform a whole industry. So this notion of where they want it, I think you're going to see more and more of this. So you see all these curbside services now, or in this instance, you could just have the items delivered into the boot of your car, even if you're not there, just all done remotely. It's midnight. This happened the other night. My wife is in Prague, and so I have my two little boys, and I realized there's no food ready for breakfast tomorrow, no milk, which my son wants in a cereal. With some services, you can order by midnight, and it's waiting for you in the cooled locker by 7 a.m., so you can grab it and make breakfast. Now, again, consumers in control, increasing expectations, and they'll only keep increasing, and that's slightly daunting, but also incredibly exciting. So daunting if you're sitting there trying to run your business with all this data, all these new devices, but incredibly exciting when you think about what it means for all of us as consumers. So I thought I'd focus on three things in terms of the implications of these major technology and consumer trends. One is, how do we keep innovating on a daily basis? I mean, just how do we innovate the core so we stay relevant, but also invent the future? And then I want to just talk more about retail. What do I see right now in terms of how we've delivered amazing growth and how e-commerce is going to continue to grow. Marketplaces, pure plays over the last 15 years were really the big story. But there's been this amazing fight back of the multi-channels. So traditional businesses that realize they can use stores, they can use call centers, they can use all these different devices to have great relationships with their customers. And if you look at the major markets now and the top 10 e-commerce players, half of them are traditional businesses. So I only see that trend going further. And that's why you see even a lot of pure plays now that are having a lot more presence in physical stores, et cetera. So innovation is everything. I thought I would just start a little bit with Google and just how we think about this. So I was recently in our Mountain View office, and I was staying in Palo Alto, and I took a run in the morning, and it was to Stanford University, and I realized that's where kind of Larry and Sergey started the business. They were researchers getting their PhDs, but it'd be incredibly hard just to get the most basic information. So if you typed in university, you'd get a bunch of web pages with the word university on it. You wouldn't get, Oxford or, Stanford or whatever. So they started asking a tough question. Well, what if you could just, ask a question and then get the right answer? And they launched this, which doesn't actually look that much different than what we have today. But it's incredibly hard to come back with the right answer when someone asks that question. And it evolved very quickly. So like if you think of the Grammy Awards in 2000, all of a sudden everyone was searching on this green dress that was worn, and we couldn't come up with the image of it. And so image search comes out of it. We realized that actually if the web is just being served in English, it's not that relevant. So translation comes out, over 1 billion translations a day in 80 different languages. And so again, search is just having to evolve. Today, you just want to speak more into your phone than type because it's just so much easier. So what is search today then if in a world of speaking? I think people think I'm mad because I speak into my phone all the time, and often it just comes from questions that my sons may ask me. And you can ask it literally everything, and there's usually an answer. So let's say, how fast is the speed of light? So I just say, how fast is the speed of light? And then I get my answer. Sorry, I'm going to kill it. No, I'm going to show it. How fast is the speed of light? So it's, I don't even know what that means, but it's 299, 792, 458, I don't know, something m's per second. And you can then start to actually get into a conversation. So any questions you guys might want to ask, like you could say, who is the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom?
David Cameron is the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
Who is he married to?
His spouse is Samantha Cameron since 1996.
So anyway, you can just keep asking and having a conversation. If you're really lonely, it's really handy. And then the other one I was talking about was just anticipating. And I mentioned this before, and this is something like, if anybody tried Google Now? Do you know what it is? Yeah, I use it like almost like a personal assistant because I'm constantly late to things. And so I sync it up with my watch, which will then buzz 10 minutes before my next meeting, and it just reminds me, or it will, if I'm walking through London, I'm late to a meeting, as always, the directions are there, and it's just helping me get there. So again, this is really useful. It's reminding, again, 7:15 is my flight back. It's telling me when to leave, and on and on and on. So this is another example of just reinventing the core. And location is going to become more and more part of this. So if you don't mind playing this video, it'll just give you kind of an understanding of how we're looking at mobile search and location context. So context will really become king. Is the video playing? Thanks.
Okay, Google, what's the name of this church?
According to Wikipedia, Saints Peter and Paul Church is a Roman Catholic church in San Francisco's North Beach neighborhood.
When does this restaurant open? Okay, Google, how tall is this?
airport tower is 210 feet tall.
Show me pictures of the rooms here.
Check out these pictures for Hotel Boheme room.
Okay, that's fun. Thank you. So hopefully I've described a little bit about how, just going back 15-ish years, how it all started and how it has to change to stay relevant. I mean, and again, 5 years from now, what will it be like? So I guess this is an example to try to just imagine what it might be like. Anyone familiar with machine learning? That's something that you guys are starting to deal with, yeah? So, I mean, a lot of what I just showed you, like with voice search or translation, all these things, or even your spam filters, that's using machine learning. Or like if, I was recently traveling and I had to get Italian, and so I said, how do I get to, I think it was like Monte Mario, and it translated into Italian for the driver of the cab. And what was happening in that split second was like I'd ask a question, a bunch of computers were sort of voting on what the right answer was, and then it returned it. And so this is kind of something that I think is interesting around general artificial intelligence. So Google bought this company called DeepMind about 1.5 years ago. And what they do is they put computers in front of games. And these were Atari games that I grew up playing. Most kids, for example, by the time they're 15 or 16, they play 16,000 hours of video games. And in some instances, if you roll this tape, you see that when you watch these videos, in the second hour of the computer starting to play the game, or the third hour, it starts to get incredibly fast. In the beginning, it's terrible. It's losing, and it's quite funny to watch the first hour. But then over time, it starts to get like super fast. Like in this boxing, it just starts to completely clobber the opponent. And you realize how it's just learning as it goes. Like I mentioned, the thermostat that I have, it learns which rooms we're in, which rooms we're not, and it heats accordingly. Or if we're on holiday, of course, it's going to heat the house differently, and on and on. So it's pretty amazing when you start to think of this, like Watson is being trialed with North Face, and they think, well, how do you bring artificial intelligence into the retail idea, where you could actually tell you what the jeans are that would be great for you, or the shirt is that's great for you. So I think this is kind of the next phase, that you'll have unstructured data and be able to use machine learning to come up with amazing experiences for people. So I feel like I'm talking a mile a minute. Is that all right? I think the next thing I want to talk about are big bets. So if 90-ish% of your time is focused on like the core, like for Google, it's make the world's information universally accessible and useful, and just really focus on that. And I showed you a lot of examples of how we're trying to do that, and that's the lion's share of your investment. But then you have this other 10, 15% where you really want to make some wild bets, and that makes sure that you're going to really stay relevant for the future as well. And so we, for example, have this team that we set up led by Sergey Brin called Google X, and they want to invent and launch moonshot technology that will make the world a radically better place. So you get a lot of amazing entrepreneurs who want to do crazy things. So they use this model. You have to have a massive problem. You have to come up with a radical solution. And for us, it's breakthrough technology. For your businesses, though, that could be something slightly different. But we're a technology business, so that's why we bring that to bear. 1.2 million people die a year in car accidents. It's pretty amazing. 93% human error. So the radical idea is, don't let those people drive, right? And so you could argue that our great-grandchildren will think it's insane that we actually drive ourselves, right? Then it's not computers doing it. They'll think it's insane. Why? Because we drink too much, or we get distracted, or we fall asleep, all these things. And with sensors and radars and lasers and all these things, in real time, being able to make decisions like, oh, that's a stop sign on the back of a bus versus a real stop sign. That's a bird that's coming, or that's someone on a bicycle. Amazing when you think about how that can save lives, but also allow you just to get on and do stuff that you want to do. So most of my colleagues back in Mountain View, they have an hour and a half commute from San Francisco to Mountain View in Silicon Valley, and then do another hour and a half or 2 hours back every day, and you're like going insane. I mean, even when I'm there staying in San Francisco, I'm literally so angry. And a few of the people that have trialed, they've dog fooded these cars. I mean, they're actually not these cars because these ones only go like 30 miles per hour, but these Lexus hybrids that we have, they said it's amazing because you arrive into work and you don't want to like kill everybody. Or you get home in the evening, one person was saying how they've got all their emails done and all the calls that just kind of stacked up with all the back-to-back meetings, and they get home and they just hang out with their family, they have dinner, and they're not worried about this thing looming there. So you start to get an understanding, of how like you could have loads of cars on the freeways, right next to each other practically, because a lot of the traffic jams, again, are human caused. You can remove that. Half of our office space practically in certain parts of Mountain View are parking lots, right? That goes away. We have one car. My wife works mostly from home. She's a designer. So the car could drop me off at work and then come back and she could use it during the day, right? So anyway, very early stages. But this is quite interesting when you think about these big bets that actually will make a real difference. Now, anybody seen this? You know what this is? What is that? Yes, it's a contact lens, and it has this really amazing microtechnology. So it can detect from tears your glucose levels. It's something that we've been working on, and then we licensed it to Novartis, and it's really cool. So imagine you don't have to get stuck, and your blood taken out a number of times a day. You just check your app. So it's more reliable, it's more safe, it's more convenient. So just an example of something that Google X came up with. And then Loon, I talked about the 5 billion people that are online. This is a trial that, again, you almost think would verge on the insane or mad. You send a bunch of balloons into the edge of space, and you use algorithms to figure out wind currents. So you get all these balloons kind of grouped together so they can bring down 4G internet, say, to a farmer in New Zealand, right, or a student in Brazil. And they're getting the internet for the first time. And actually, the balloons seem like they can stay up there for a long time. So again, this is an entrepreneur who's working within Google X, trying to bring the internet, to billions of people. So super exciting. And if it's balloons or something slightly different, it shows you if you bring creativity, innovation, you can do some incredible things. So just to summarize this, I think, as you get bigger as a business too, you almost get into the habit of saying no. Someone comes up with a great idea, and you say, I'm really sorry, but yes, that's a nice idea, but we just don't have time. Or our schedule is, means that we can't do anything for the next year and a half or whatever. So how do you get in the habit of saying yes, and getting away from this sort of 10% improvement? Let's improve this by 10%. Yes, you have to do that in some instances, like I've said, but in other instances, you have to be getting a small group of very committed, talented people together that can move incredibly fast to try to get you 10 steps ahead of other people or 10 times faster than those around you. You could argue that when we made the acquisition of the company Android, that helped us in that mobile space get 10 steps ahead. Open source, at that time we were developing software for 100 different feature phones. Make it open source. If you're an app developer, just develop once for one platform. So now I'm just going to transition a little bit into retail. Because that's, most of you are retailers in the room. It's what you think about. And just like Google, just to stay fast, keep the heart and soul of a startup, has teams like X, but also tries to apply 10X thinking across the business. More and more retailers are coming up with these retail innovation hubs or labs. Now, it doesn't mean you have to do one yourself. It just is an interesting phenomenon. Businesses like Macy's are doing some amazing things with multi-channel, as is Nordstrom. Right? I've been doing it for a number of years. And if you talk to the people that work at Nordstrom, some of them are my ex-Amazon colleagues, they bring in developers, designers, et cetera, that have the ability to launch apps sometimes in weeks. Right? And they keep them separate from the rest of the organization so they can move incredibly fast. And they can literally trial prototype apps with customers in stores within a few weeks. And then they can launch that from one store to 100, again, within weeks, not months, not years. So being fleet of foot, being experimental, trying new things. 10 might not work, but 1 may. And again, I went to the lab with Argos, and it was amazing, right? It was there's so much going on. There were so many things that they were trialing or launching. They were doing hackathons. They were bringing in Google, Facebook engineers, saying what should be the next app that we try. And then weeks later, they're going live. So I think that's super exciting. And when I was in Mountain View again back in November, I actually met someone that worked in this innovation hub. I mean, it's kind of out there, but just go with me for a second. And it's a very traditional business, Lowe's, right? But they have this innovation hub, and just watch, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And this was a real trial happening in San Jose when I was there at the time. Can you play the video?
With Uncommon Partners. We focus on making science fiction a reality. Retail really hasn't changed much in the last couple hundred years. The robots are the first thing that can really change the customer experience.
Hello, I am Oshbot, the Orchard Store robot helper. What are you looking for today?
The robot will come up to you and will say, "Hi, what can I help you with?"
Where can I find more of these?
I'm looking for hammers.
Me gustaría comprar esto.
Can you place the object in my viewfinder? Is this the item you are looking for?
Yes.
I'll take you.
Once you show the robot the item, it will then navigate you to where that item can be found.
The robot has multiple sensors and is able to navigate inside of the store. It creates a map overnight. So the next day in the morning, the robot knows where the products are located.
I'll take you to the Plum 16-ounce flat contoured handle hammer.
One of my favorite parts of the robot
that's-
is its ability to speak multiple languages.
That's good, thank you. I think we could stop that. So, slightly weird, isn't it? And a human being can come onto the screen, by the way, if you're not having the best conversation with the robot. But you know, it's just an example, right? Like, would you expect that from like a traditional retailer to be trialing like robots in the store environment? And so that was my point. It's like, if you have this healthy disregard for the impossible, and you get groups together that love doing this type of stuff, you know, retail, as we know it in the store environment, can be reinvented. Hopefully I've conveyed just a little bit of the essence of what does it take to be truly innovative. I guess to summarize for Google, you know, make a product, like Google Now is one that I love, that you want to use at least twice a day. So it passes what we call the toothbrush test. And utility is something that Mitch talked about. It has real utility. Like Maps have real utility for me, right? Or Gmail, you might say, has real utility. And you have these apps that you just use, and they're important to you. Now, this healthy disregard for the impossible, like a lot of this stuff like balloons or self-driving cars, you often don't have as much competition, because who would be crazy enough to try it, right? But you can also attract some of the greatest talent in the world, because they want to work on these balloons that can bring, you know, internet access to those that wouldn't otherwise get it. So, and also think global. We're in a global marketplace. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But again, when I talked about translate, you know, in 80 different languages. So the rise of the pure plays. So what did they take advantage of? Well, global e-commerce sales last year was 1.5 trillion. What would you guess it will be by 2018? Just you can be. It's going to be really big. I guess that's the theme of all my numbers and little quizzes. It's like 2.4 trillion, right? So online again, sales on the internet is just getting started, right? I mean, just getting started. And if you look at it on a global basis, like I grew up in the States, I spent, you know, a lot of my time in e-commerce there. I've been in Europe the last 12 years, so I've spent a lot of time in kind of the West and really understanding what's going on. But actually, if you look at the next handful of years, it's all about Asia Pacific in terms of where the biggest e-commerce growth will be, where the biggest amount of investment will be. And China is a very extreme example of this as well. Which, you know, when you look at someone like Alibaba, I'll talk about them in a second, it just brings it to life massively. But one of the things that I think has been fascinating, are these marketplaces. So what is a marketplace? Anybody want to go for a definition of it? So sorry, just like in the e-commerce, you know, context, obviously. What comprises a marketplace? Sorry? Yeah, so you have like this amazing selection, almost sometimes infinite selection of things. You can go there and you know it's probably going to, you know, if it's a power tool that they'll have that. Really, really competitive pricing. Why? Because you're not sometimes, in the instance, say, of Amazon selling that power drill, you're having everyone else sell the same power drill. Anything else about a marketplace? What makes something a marketplace? Supply and demand. Supply and demand. So, you know, one of the things that a lot of these marketplaces spend a lot of time doing is figuring out how can we drive unbelievable amounts of qualified traffic to the site. And that's the proposition. Like if you're a small, you know, jeweler, you can say, hey, come on to our site and we'll make sure there's loads of traffic, loads of people get to know your brand, and they can start selling. And suddenly, too, open up, say, 20 or 30 or 40 marketplaces, because a lot of these marketplaces are global, and that's one of the attractions. Flipkart, and there's 2 other major marketplaces in India. I mean, that market is just exploding. And then, I was just in Japan a week ago. I mean, Rakuten is a very big marketplace, and oftentimes the commissions are very small. And there was one instance of like someone who was selling eggs on Rakuten, like literally selling eggs from a small farm. And so suddenly, instead of just selling to 1 or 2 supermarkets, you're selling to all of Japan. And your sales, a lot of these businesses 3, 4, 5 times. And then suddenly, if it's not in the instance of eggs, they're selling into 50 or 100 countries.
Also, they own no inventory, so it's similar to Airbnb and Uber.
That's great. That's exactly right. And so again, you're de-risking massive.
That doesn't have inventory.
Yeah. So you don't have to like house it in your warehouses. Now, I think what's interesting about someone like Amazon is it's actually a hybrid. So it will do retail, but often if you notice you're buying from a third party through Prime, Amazon has that item in their fulfillment center so they can ship it to you within 24 hours. But again, it's a commission for the fulfillment. I guess what I'll talk about for 1 second is someone like Alibaba. You've probably all seen this stat by now, but when you really look underneath it, so this was Singles Day. This is when, like in China, you celebrate the fact that you're not dating anybody, right? You're just like, it's awesome to be single. I'm free and I'm happy. And so you can get a TV for 80% off. That's the kind of idea. So incredible deep discounts. And we've seen this now with like Black Friday. Did you guys all experience that? Like in the UK, it's suddenly become huge. This is massive when you compare it to, say, Cyber Monday or Black Friday in the US. It just makes it look paltry, right? The thing I thought was really interesting, this is a single day. This is over 9 billion, right, of e-commerce in a day. Think about that for a second. Like many of us are happy to build a website that does 100 million, euros or pounds in a year. That's in a given day and almost flawlessly executed. Over 40% was mobile, right? The year before it was like 10%. So there's something, when I talked about Amazon being quite flexible with their business model, not just be a retailer, be a marketplace, Alibaba is unbelievably flexible. So they do what like eBay does. If it's consumers selling to consumers, they do B2C in Tmall. Add those 2 entities up, that's 80% of all e-commerce in China. This is one of the top 5 tech companies in the world in terms of market cap. They only were second to Facebook last year in terms of the amount they spent on acquisitions, right? I mean, this is, if you combine Amazon and eBay sales together, Alibaba does more. So they don't just grow the top line, say like an Amazon, but they grow the bottom line. They're highly profitable, like over 70% gross margin. So yes, the marketplace, in my opinion, is here to stay. It's an incredibly powerful business model. It's not only, again, able to give you volume, but give you profit. So, and I think what they did that was incredibly smart is this was in 2005 in an interview, and Jack Ma, their founder CEO, is just like, listen, I'm going to lose if I just try to play by their rules. So I kind of know China, and I'm going to just focus on that. And it's amazing. Like, they have their own versions of AdWords. They've launched their own, say, PayPal, that has over 70% of mobile payments. They have an investment arm that's raised like over $65 billion. They've got Alipay and like over 350 department stores. So when you're paying, you can use their service. Again, it's like it keeps going on. Like I could mention 5, 7 more businesses that they've just launched, or they're not happy that Tencent is taking a lot of their customers. We're going to launch our own social messaging app. 10 million users in 3 months. So going back to that idea of being flexible, being innovative, trying new things, they're one of the best. And what's interesting is they haven't really internationalized. Even though they ship to over 200 countries, in the next 3 to 5 years, you'll probably be learning and hearing more about Alibaba. Like they're hiring right now in London, and they've got some interesting acquisitions that they've made to move into markets like the US. Again, very small commission, 2 or 3%, and then promise lots of traffic. Their goal is to have every single small, medium-sized business selling online, and also for us as consumers to be able to sell online trivially. So fascinating. And I've already talked a little bit about Amazon, and I'm just conscious of time. they've obviously done some amazing things, but are they really just a retailer, right? They're into media now. We talked about artificial intelligence before. They've got something called Echo. I mean, they've got a web services, a cloud services business, over $5 billion. It was $1 billion in profit last year. Like, what is Amazon? I mean, it's flexible. It's growing with the times. And this is the other half of retail. 50% of retail, it almost doesn't exist online, right? We're talking about like 2-3%. This is the next frontier. And they've been really opening up one fulfillment center after another. I think it's usually over 10% of the gross revenue that they make, they put into building more fulfillment centers so they can deliver to you same day or next day within hour slots. Ocado is a business that came out of the UK that many of you may know. They're not just doing this themselves, at probably over £1 billion of revenue, but now they do it all for Morrisons. So they brought Morrisons online. They're now a platform. They're showing real flexibility with business model. That's when their stock shot up. That's when people started to think, wow, what if they were to do 5 or 6 of these deals globally? They're going to bring e-commerce to grocery, which is, again, half of retail. Farfetch in luxury, this is a marketplace. Like, they're valued now at over $1 billion. They're getting investment after investment. They've gone global so quickly. I can order something from a boutique in Tokyo and pick it up at a boutique on Bond Street. They do it all. They just say, don't worry about this selling online stuff. We're really interested in your exclusive Stella McCartney line. We'll get it on the web. We'll market it. Don't worry. And I went to one of their conferences where we had all these boutique owners in a room like this, and they were amazed because most of them weren't on the web a year ago. And they're like, my sales are growing. I'm now selling in 20 different countries. Amazing. ASOS, you've all heard about. But again, all it's symbolizing is make it easy for people to buy, return items, and in some markets, they're number one. They're number one, say, in Australia for their demographic, and many others. Zalando is another example where there's more searches on the term Zalando than for the fashion term for in German, Schuhe. I can't pronounce it. Forgive me. I shouldn't even have tried. But if you look at a brand like H&M, there's more searches on Zalando. So that's my point about thinking global. I talked about that when we launch a new product. We want it to work in all markets. This is a business that is moving fast. And even someone like AO that sells washing machines online, just focus on that and other white goods or ovens. Like, oh my God, your oven broke, you have to make dinner. They will get that oven in your house, say like 4 hours later, so you're cooking for your kids by 6 p.m. Unbelievable delivery, service, and it's just easy, trivially simple to buy. Booking in travel. Again, going back to my mobile theme, 160% year-on-year growth. I mean, it's just easy across all devices. It's just so simple to book the hotel. It's going back to put the consumer first, forget about the channels or the devices, and just focus. Now, I just want to spend the last couple minutes just talking about the fight back, though, which I'm really excited about. Screwfix, the business you probably never heard of, part of Kingfisher. And if you're like a plumber and you're suddenly on your job, you don't have the right part, no problem. Go into the app. It'll tell you there's the part 0.1 mile away. You walk in, they hand it right to you. Seamless cross-channel delivery. And this is just an example of you go in through the store. If you play the video just for about 10 or 15 seconds, this is something called
on the shelf in the store.
Project Tango can determine a user's position and orientation in the store within centimeters to help enhance the shopper's experience. With precise positioning, we can add in 3D augmentation in each aisle, merging digital with...
Yeah, so I mean, it's something called Project Tango. If you look at it, it's quite cool because I even met someone who's blind that uses this because your mobile device can figure out kind of shapes and movement. Like I could see what you looked like roughly just from this technology. And so using it in the store or retail environment down to the centimeter, right? It can direct you to that item. And all this physical and digital, it'll just merge. And that's kind of the overarching point. We're in such early stages. And I think all of you probably obsess with this. The businesses that I see that think about how to attribute value from digital to offline, they're doing incredibly well. In this instance, Carphone just saw, if they got someone to the website, say on a mobile device, they'd see 3 times as many sales offline. The store connection, someone looking for a new phone, if they showed up when people were looking, they were driving massive footfall. Same thing with Lafayette. And we have countless case studies of this. So attribution is really a killer differentiator. I think partnering as well is so fundamental. People were shocked back in the UK when you could start picking up items from eBay sellers in Argos. And they just announced recently how they're going to be partnering with Sainsbury's. And I think this is the new world we live in. We've been so competitive, like, oh, we hate them and we have to fight them for this little bit of market share. We're in a different world. The consumers are in control. We have to start partnering even with some of our competitors to be able to give them truly amazing experiences. And this is an example of Darty. I was in France recently, the biggest electricals player there. They have this sort of panic button thing for €2 a month. Any problem you have in your home on an electrical, hit the button. Within a minute, someone's on the phone helping you. Even if they don't sell that item, if it's an electrical, they'll help you. If they can't fix it, they'll have a new one right to you. So thinking of service more radically, Zappos, again, even if they don't sell the items in this app, they'll help you look great and feel great through giving you good fashion advice. So the service, this is just a trial that KLM trialed. They have 250 service reps. Any problem you had, you could go to this hashtag and you could get help. Like, oh, I forgot my passport, I'm at Heathrow, my flight leaves in an hour and a half, they'd get it couriered to you. Amazing, showing how their customer service is better than others. So listen, this is a little bit of a whirlwind. I feel like I've had to maybe go too fast because I probably tried to put too much content in, so thank you for being patient. But just summarizing, we have huge trends happening right now, but it's a very early stage. Mobile's right at the heart of it. Almost no one's on the web. They will be. It'll be a much faster web. All these devices will be super connected. How we make sense of the data to bring great experiences to people will make the difference to whether or not we're successful as businesses. We have to constantly innovate the core business, but also make bets for the future. And I think with the rise of pure plays and marketplaces, how do we use them? A lot of the businesses I work with now, they use marketplaces to go into new areas of the world that they never thought they'd be selling in, and suddenly they're in 50 markets. And they can then develop their own site, say in Germany, or their own site, but they've tested very low cost. So use them when you need to. And then if you're a multi-channel business, use that to your advantage. We all want human interactions. The store has a massive role to play, and it will continue to. And as multi-channel traditional businesses, it's all to play for. Thank you very much. Cheers.